And now, introducing your host, Steve Lags.
All right, here we go. We got another episode of Steve Lags Unfiltered. I have a really special guest, a patriot here, a really special man. I have Captain George Dom, a former naval officer and aviator. What a resume this man has here. I'm just going to rattle off a couple things before we bring him in here. But he commanded a combat-ready air wing of over 2,500 personnel and 70 tactical aircraft in 8 squadrons on both the USS Eisenhower and the USS John F. Kennedy. Really incredible, impressive experience. For 2 years, served as commanding officer and a flight leader of the Navy Flight Demonstration Squadron, the Blue Angels. Everybody knows the Blue Angels. These guys are sick, flying through, feet off the ground, just several feet off the ground, close to each other. They just think together. They move as a team and as a unit. Really incredible. And has taken that experience, over 26 years of experience in the military, and brought that over into the corporate world and helped. He's become a speaker. He's worked with different organizations, had held multiple different roles. And here he is today to talk to us about high trust leadership. George, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Steve. Great to be with you.
Great to have you here. Well, first and foremost, all our veterans, we always want to thank them for their service. Thank you for your service. You dedicated 26 years of your life to our country, and you're a real patriot, and we really appreciate that. Without brave people like you, our country, the freedom that we have, that so many of us take for granted on a day-to-day basis, just wouldn't exist. I appreciate it so much.
Yeah, you're very welcome. And we often say in the Navy that you recruit the sailor, but the family serves, and it's our spouses and children that also sacrifice along with us. So, thank you.
Yeah, so that's true, because you're going to take, if you've got a family, you're going to spend a lot of time away from them, and they're going to make a lot of sacrifices. And that's a really great point, that we don't only need to support the veterans or the people serving in the military, but also their families that are really making the biggest sacrifices in many cases to support them.
That's right.
So let's talk a little bit about trust and leadership, because when you think about all of your experience, that 2 years in the Blue Angels probably really is a great example, a great slice of it, to really focus on what it takes. You led a school. You were the leader of the Blue Angels, right?
That's right.
So your call sign, we talked about this a little bit. So the leader, what do they call? It's actually not the leader. You got to help me with this. What's the actual the correct term?
No, that is correct. Yeah, the flight leader. Yep, flying the number one jet.
So you're flying. Mm-hmm. You're out in front, and you have wingman on each side of you.
That's right.
And you're the boss. You're the call sign's the boss, right?
That's correct. For those 2 years, at least at work anyway, my call sign was the boss, not at home.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's a different boss at home usually.
That's right.
Yeah. My wife's call sign is the boss at home. So how many jets are in the Blue Angels flying at one time?
Yeah, so the demonstration is 6 of us, six pilots flying, and the show is divided into 3 different sections, if you will. The one is the diamond formation, 4 pilots literally flying as one for the entire show for 40 minutes. And then Blue Angels 5 and 6 are the solo pilots, and they're going to show you the maximum performance capability of the F-18. Plus 7.5 Gs, minus 3 Gs, doing very dynamic maneuvering. And then in the last third of the show, Blue Angels 5 and 6 join the Diamond, and we now have 6 aircraft in formation that we're doing 3-dimensional aerobatic maneuvers at very low altitude with six of us together.
And very low altitude is what, like a couple hundred feet, or?
Yeah, I think, it's interesting. We start out around a couple hundred feet, and then as the season progresses on, they're continually trying to improve the demonstration throughout the year. By the end of the season, the maneuvers will be down 100 feet, 75 feet in formation. It's pretty amazing.
So how fast are you flying, and how close are you together in formation, 6 of you?
Yeah. Well, we are, depending on the maneuver, somewhere typically between 300 to 450, 500 miles an hour. The looping maneuvers obviously require more speed to get up and over the top. And if the wingman could roll down the window in their cockpit, they could reach out and touch either my jet or the jet that's in front of them. I'm talking, a couple feet apart, which is remarkable. Now, we don't start out that way, of course, in the training, but we gradually, as we build trust and confidence, we move the jets closer together and lower, and then introduce more dynamic maneuvering.
So so think about this. You're not even, these jets are not connected. The only connection you have is trust and confidence.
Yeah. People ask me, are there fancy computers that are doing it and so forth? And no, it's all eye-hand coordination, steely concentration, and trust in each other, 6 days a week, for 11 and a half months of the year for 2 years. Yeah.
So obviously, to qualify, to be honest, to be on a team, you first have to have the skill set. Right? That's obvious. You need the competency, but in order to operate not individually, but to operate as a team, walk us through that. Like I know you talk about your 5 C's of a high level leader. Let's talk a little bit about that, because this is just an exemplar, an excellent example of what it looks like for someone to lead a unit to perform at a level that is just incredible.
Yeah. So, the 2 years that I was the leader, and oh, by the way, you come in as the leader as opposed to fleeting up, which is we could talk about that dynamic. But the 2 years that I was on the team, I never forgot the tragedy that the Air Force demonstration team, the Thunderbirds, suffered in January of 1982, way back when they were doing a formation loop in training. And when you're flying that close together, the wingmen aren't looking around at anywhere else but at this hot piece of metal that's 2 feet away from them, as they're making very small continuous corrections to stay in position. And sadly, on this day, the Air Force Thunderbirds were doing a loop and in formation, and the leader didn't pull out in time at the bottom of the loop, and they put 4 T-38 fighters symmetrically spaced into the desert floor in Nevada, killing all 4 pilots. And so I had to figure out, in order for me to be successful as the leader of the Blue Angels and put on a Blue Angel air show, I had to figure out what are the things that I have to do so that my wingmen will come to work every day and literally enthusiastically put their life in my hands and my life in their hands. We're flying so close together. And, frankly, I wasn't smart enough to figure it all out ahead of time, but we had 2 really amazing years together and safe years, and we flew, really amazing air shows. And when I look back on that experience, I realized that there were 5 things that I had to pay attention to as the leader for us to be successful. And you have to pay attention to all 5. If I drop one out, we were going to have a setback. But the good news is, if you pay attention to each one, they reinforce the other 4. So you end up with this upward spiral of trust and confidence, which is where the magic happens. And so the 5, I'll tell you very quickly, and then we can dive into whichever one you'd like to get into. But the first one is character. And for each one of these, and they're all based on the notion that in order to be trusted, you must be trustworthy. You have to earn this, because trust can't be expected, demanded. It can't be purchased. It can't be coerced. It's a gift. And it's a gift that you have to keep earning every single day. And so for each one of these, there was a question that my team was asking about me every day. And depending upon the answers they discerned to the question, they would make a judgment to what degree they were going to trust me. I believe these are the same 5 questions that all your listeners are being asked by their teams about them. And working at home in every relationship, right? Because trust applies across the board. So very quickly, the first one is character. And the question my team was asking about me was very simple. Do you walk your talk? Do you live up to your responsibilities? Do you keep your promises and your commitments? Do you live our shared values? The second one is commitment. Now, my team was absolutely certain that I was going to show up with a smile on my face to lead them whenever the sun was shining and the sky was blue and the air was smooth.
Right.
But they knew that during the air show season, we were going to face some storms, both literally and figuratively. And what they wanted to know is, are you going to be with us when the going gets tough? When we have to take a punch, are you going to show up and not just show up to take names or cast blame or CYA, but are you going to show up and bring your A game and lead us through the storm to success on the other side? The third one is you touched on is competence, right? And of course, that's very important. How good are you at whatever your role is? But I put it third here for a reason, because I believe that if you don't get the first two, the character and the commitment, this doesn't really matter.
Right.
But if you can get somebody who walks our talk and is all in, and they have a reasonable amount of skill and talent, you can teach them pretty much what they need to learn. So every day when we sat down for our pre-flight briefing around the conference table, and I would look around and I would, at my 5 wingmen, and I could see this third question in their eyes. And the question was, are you good enough to be our leader today? Are you better than you were yesterday, but not as good as you're going to be tomorrow? Because we don't want to stay here. We want to keep getting better and better and better. And by definition, we as a team can't get better if you, as the leader, don't get better. And then the fourth one is the one I think most leaders in this, Mach 2 world that we live in these days are missing oftentimes, and that's connection. And so the question that my team was asking about me was, or I had to ask myself was, do they believe I understand them? Do they believe that I get them, that I understand what I'm asking of them, what their challenges are, what their hopes are, what their concerns are? And I found that if you take time to get deep and understand that they feel understood, then they'll join up and come along. But if they don't believe you get them and what they're trying to accomplish and how the challenges they face, then there's always hesitation, separation, and disengagement. And then the fifth one, is communication, right? And that's really the lubricant of the high trust engine is communication. And if connection is, do they believe I understand them? Then communication is, do they understand me? Am I clear, concise, and direct? Am I transmitting in a way that they can understand? And am I checking to make sure that the messages that I'm transmitting are the ones that are being received?
This is gold, guys. And we're going to dig into all this because this is so aligned with it. It's amazing, George. We bring on high-performing leaders, successful entrepreneurs, former military vets, whether they were Naval SEALs, or here you are leading the Blue Angels. All the principles always come back the same, but everyone's got a little bit different flavor to it and take on it. Now, first is, did you have someone mentor you and guide you through that and say, hey, George, this is what you're going to need to do? Or did you figure this out on your own and identify that on your own? How did you come up with this?
Well, I had been in the Navy, 15 years or so when I took over command. And in that time, I was in multiple squadrons, flying off the aircraft carrier, in combat and peacetime training and so forth. And in that whole environment, trust, for us, trust wasn't something that was just nice to have or whatever. It was a strategic imperative. We recruited for trustworthiness. We trained to build it every day. If you had it, you got rewarded and promoted. And if you lost it and couldn't get it back quickly, you were either sidelined or you were gone. So that whole experience I had leading up to that moment was all about, developing this, because I think it's true in every high performance team. As you just said, I mean, you can look at it from a lot of different ways, but if you talk to anybody that's been on a high performing team, it always comes down to a fundamental level of trust.
Yeah, and you said trust is earned. It is a gift, right?
Yeah.
You're not entitled to trust. You don't get trust automatically. You earn trust over time, and it takes time to earn trust. And you talked about the season with the Blue Angels, where you start further away, higher altitude, and you work your way up, and that's about building trust. But how fast can trust be lost? Well, it takes a long time to gain, but it can be lost in just an instance.
Absolutely. It can be. It can be very fragile. And, sometimes the people that we're closest to that trust us the most, the betrayal counts double. I mean, when somebody you really feel strongly about and then they betray your trust, that's probably the most painful.
So when you do you walk your talk? So for me, when I think about that, that's about, if you're a leader, it's setting the example. Am I going to do? You do what you say what you do, and you're leading yourself, and you're going to set the great example. I'm going to demonstrate it. Like, hey, I am the example. Lead by example. Am I on the right track here?
You are absolutely right. But here's the challenge for that is that no matter how self-aware you are, no matter how high your EQ is, you can't know exactly how you're coming across to the other people in the organization, particularly when you get into larger organizations where people are more and more removed from you, right? You can think you're doing everything right, but they're perceiving something differently, right? And so you have to have truth tellers in your organization, people that you will authorize in some manner to bring you the truth whenever they see that the perception out in the organization is that different than what they know your values to be and how you're coming across. Let me tell you a funny story from my personal life. I mean, my daughters are now grown and out of college, but back when they were very young, my younger daughter she was all things Disney when she was about 4 or 5 years old, right? And she would always say to me, "Dad, can we go to Disney World?" And of course, I wanted to give her that kind of experience that many of us have had, right? That lifelong memory.
Right.
And so I would say, "Yeah, we're going to go to Disney World. It's going to be great." And finally, at some point, my wife, who's my consummate truth teller, she said, when do you think we're going to go to Disney? And I said, well, I don't know, maybe next spring sometime when, the work demands aren't so much, we'll take some time off and go to Disney World. She said, your daughter works on about a 2-week horizon. So every 2 weeks that goes by that we don't go to Disney is a broken promise. You do get that, right? And so we had to make some plans and get to Disney there before too long. But it's just a silly example, though, that people perceive you in a variety of ways. And so people have to be able to come to you and say, "Hey, boss, I know you mean this or your intention is this, but here's how it's coming across whenever you do A, B, or C," right? And then you have to be willing, the old saying is that people will bring you the truth once, but depending upon how you react to the truth, you may never see it again.
That's right.
So we have to be wise and mature enough to take a look at the truth, and it shows up in a variety of ways, right? It can show up as a thunderclap where you're laying on a hospital gurney with a heart attack, or it can show up as a whisper or an offhanded look. And we have to be wise enough to listen for the truth and then evaluate, is there something there that I need to act on? Because, it's funny, the people other than your spouse and your kids, who's the very best at bringing you the truth?
Who's that?
People that don't like you very much.
Yeah, because they'll tell you exactly the way it is.
They don't care how you feel about it, right? And they're going to wrap it up with a lot of drama and stuff, and they're going to jam it in your face. And then you have to unpack all of that and decide, is there something here that I need to act on? And, usually there is something there. But anyway.
I like to say where there's smoke, there's fire, so like, look, maybe so when you're hearing something, you're getting some feedback, so to your point is if you have some truth tellers that you can trust and you respect them, then okay, good, I'm giving you permission. And when you tell me something I might not like to hear, I'm not going to respond emotionally. I'm not going to chop your head off for it. I'm not going to give you a dirty look. I'm going to say, hey, you know what? Obviously, that's not the best news for me to hear right now, but I'm going to give it some consideration. Let me think about it. Let me process this. Because I think that when you hear a truth that might be inconvenient, the first reaction is to kind of defend it and like, okay, that can't be true. But I think that if you give yourself a day, 24 hours, so let me just process that and give it some consideration. And I think you get over the emotional hump and then, okay, now I'm processing this more logically. Hey, I think they might be onto something there. I got to watch what I'm doing with that.
Absolutely. And particularly if you're hearing things multiple times, right? When you hear that something 2 or 3 times and you go, ooh, maybe there really is something here on how I'm coming across.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot to that. We talk about hey, 1 time's an instance, second 2 times might be a coincidence, 3 times now I got a trend here. So now I got a trend of somebody saying something. All right, there's something there now. It's not just like a 1-time instance or hey, maybe it was a coincidence. 2 people mentioned it 3 times. Now I got a trend.
Yeah. If you hear 3 times that you're a horse's ass, you better saddle up.
You're a horse's ass. Well, I've heard that a lot from my wife, but let's not go there. Hey, so let's talk about commitment. So, I like it. It's, I think that the real version of people show up when things are not good. When things are good, when you got a wind at your back, you got a sunny day, we're just winning, that we're killing the other team if we're in a sport or whatever we're doing. Hey, everyone can show up. It's really easy. But when things go wrong and we got a big obstacle, we got a situation, something happened that we didn't expect to happen, that is when real character shows up. And you talk about commitment in those moments as a leader. Talk a little bit about not just simply being committed to leading the team through it, but how you show up during that as well, I think is really important for a leader, because I think that if you're a leader of the Blue Angels and you're like, hey, we're going to get through it, but oh my God, this is a bullshit. I can't believe this. This sucks, guys. It's also about positive energy, right? I'm sure that you got to bring, hey, we got to bring some stability and calm and hey, we're going to get through this. This is just an opportunity for us.
Exactly. A couple of thoughts. One is interesting is that we had a rule when we were flying that when you talked on the radios, you could never show frustration or whatever on the radios. And it's sort of back to the thing, does your behavior affect your feelings, your emotions, or do your emotions affect your behavior? And it's really both. And, but I found, that by presenting yourself in a positive way, not in a inauthentic way, but in a positive, authentic way, has a dramatic effect on yourself as well as on the people around you. So, that's sort of number one. And then, people, when you talk about commitment, and the question is, where does commitment come from? What is it that gets people where they can take a punch and they just keep coming back strong. And I believe fundamentally that commitment comes from a very deep, a very clear, and a very intense sense of purpose.
That's the word I was thinking. That's exactly right.
In the military, we call it mission. When you know what mission you're on and why it's important, then that is what gets you up and you persevere through the storm and everything in order to get on the other side. So we as leaders, we have a responsibility to help our folks understand the why of the mission. I mean, if you think about it, as leaders, we are very good at talking about the what and the how. Here's what we're going to do, and here's how we're going to do it. But I find that many leaders are reluctant for some reason to talk about the why. And the team is hungry for the why. They want to know, why is this work important? Why is it that being on this team is going to help me get to where I want to get to in life? Why is it important to you? And when you can be very clear about that and communicate it to them, then you don't have to motivate people. You just have to train them, resource them, give them the benefit of your experience, and then get out of the way because they are going to be fired up to get it done.
Absolutely. It's, the why, it's always lead with the why. That's the big vision of what we're doing. When you're saying this, I'm just thinking purpose, and there you go. You can say purpose and the why of the mission. Even when we lead team members, when we lead team members here in my organization, we learn a little bit about their goals because we want to help align their goals with the work that they do in our organization. But it's not enough to know. So if you have a goal in life in general, which is it's a mission. If we're not in touch with the why of it, like why is that important, we're much less likely to commit to that goal because we're not in tune with the real greater purpose of it. Like why am I trying to accomplish that goal? But once we get in touch with that why and the purpose of a goal, well, now our commitment is so much greater because now I'm not thinking about the goal. I'm thinking about why I'm doing the goal, why I'm pursuing a goal, or I'm not thinking about the mission. It's why the mission is important.
Right. Yeah. And that really helps you avoid distractions along the way because there's just so much stuff coming at us every day and it's easy to get distracted and so forth. And then, you dilute the mission and you don't really accomplish it.
Amazing stuff. Oh, I'm guaranteed the audience is loving this right now. Connection and communication. I love this because connection. Do you understand me? So someone that's looking at a leader is wondering, do you understand me? Connection's about making a relationship ultimately with the people that you lead, correct?
That's correct. Yeah. And it's a different question than do I believe I understand them? Because what I believe is interesting, but not relevant. It's what they believe. And what that requires is that, Stephen Covey famously said that you can be efficient with things, but you can't be efficient with people. And so we have to slow down to make a connection with somebody. We have to slow down and take time and listen and pay attention in order for them to feel understood. And a lot of leaders, unfortunately, because there's so much of an emphasis on productivity and there's pressure to perform and all of that, that we're just moving so fast that we rarely take the time to slow down and connect with our folks.
How did you take some time to connect with your 5 wingmen? What did you do? What did you find to be successful?
Yeah, well, we spend a lot of time together, right? If you think about it, we're together 6 days a week and we travel we're gone 300 days of the year. So, and at the beginning of the training, you go out to, our home base is in Pensacola, Florida, but we would go out to El Centro, California in the Imperial Valley where the weather's just glorious so that we could predictively be able to fly the 100+ training flights in order to put the team together. And it's getting away from all the distractions. The whole squadron is there, not just the pilots, but we were a team of 125 when you can include the enlisted maintenance folks and the support officers and everything. So in that environment, we are, making connection and building trust and so forth in order to be able to begin the air show season in the middle of March.
So it comes down to just investing time with people.
Investing time and being willing to, to listen to them, right? As opposed to, it's funny how we as leaders, we think we're, good listeners or whatever. And a while back, there was a study done of doctors because they found that, the biggest thing that would leverage a doctor's ability to solve a patient's medical problem was the doctor's ability to get the patient to simply open up and describe what the symptoms are and what they're experiencing. So they followed these doctors around, 300 doctors, and they monitored how much time would they take to listen to the patient.
Yeah.
And what they found is that, the doctor would say, okay, Mrs. Smith, what's going on? How are you doing? And she would start to talk. And on average, the doctors would interrupt the patients in 18 seconds.
Yeah. We all been there where we feel like we just been rushed through a doctor's office.
Yeah. Well, and this is what my wife is talking about whenever she'll be opening up to me about something that's important to her or, going on with her. And she'll she'll start talking and then all of a sudden she'll stop and she'll say, "You're not listening, you're waiting." And she's right, right? Because she gets 8 or 9 words out and I got the answer. And I'm a fix-it guy. I'm like your listeners, right? That's what we do. We solve problems. So she gets 8 or 9 words out. I got the answer figured. And now I'm just waiting for her to take a breath so I can give her the answer and then let's go, right? So we just have to learn sometimes to be better listeners.
Yeah. So, and in order to do that, in order to be able to do that, you really got to be curious and interested in the people. Because if you're not interested, it's going to probably be impossible. And if you really have a genuine interest in helping them and helping them win in the end of the day there. And I love how communication, I say communication is not what you say, it's what someone heard. And you talk about communication is the people that you're leading are going to ask, can I understand you, the leader? And it's communication's what they heard. So, and how do you know what they heard? You know what you said. Well, we usually know what we said. Sometimes we remember it incorrectly. But how do we know what people heard at the end of the day, George? How do we know that they actually heard us?
Right. Well, in aviation, we have a very specific protocols and procedures in order to avoid misunderstanding. So when I'm flying and the controller gives me an altitude assignment or a change in routing or whatever, you're required to repeat back exactly what they told you, and then they confirm, that is correct. And so we have to do something similar on the ground. When we're giving direction or we're communicating, we have to stop and ask somebody in some form or fashion, what did you hear? And get that and have them then tell you. And you'll be surprised how often they heard something different than you transmitted.
Now, it makes so much sense, but a lot of the listeners are gonna be like, "Oh, I don't have time to do that. Like, I'd rather just go and I can't stop and ask, what'd you hear?" In the long run, why did that work for you guys versus, in your situation, it's life or death. Is it just that, or is it, hey, no, this is really what you should be doing, making sure people hear you when you're transferring critical information?
Yeah, well, it is. It comes in aviation. It just comes out of we just can't afford to have a misunderstanding because there could be, a mishap. But I would say to your listeners, those that say they can't afford to take the time to confirm that the message has been received, is that then how much time is it going to take for them to deal with the misunderstanding? Right. Whenever the listener does something different, and that's really the problem with leadership in communication is the presumption that it's occurred. Mm-hmm. Right? A leader says, "Oh, I sent the email, they get it," or "I gave the talk, they get it," or "I had the one-on-one conversation, he gets it." They don't get it, at least not right away, because. If you think about it, how many times do you have to hear a new song before you understand the lyrics?
Yeah.
So we have to transmit in a way that is consistent, direct, clear, and frequent enough until the message settles in. And otherwise, there is going to be misunderstanding out there, and then you're going to pay the price in efficiency and productivity.
Yeah, and I think that a point you made there is some messages need to be frequently sent, where they need to hear this multiple times or reinforce it so that, okay, they're getting it now. They're not going to look. Learning isn't just like, hey, I read a book once and I learned everything, I'm good to go. Like there's repetition in learning, and sometimes the messaging that we're sending is teaching them something, not just simply giving them a task to do. It's maybe we're trying to get them to understand something. We need to repeat that over and over again.
Yes, indeed. And as an example of how each of these 5 reinforce the others, when you're repeating a message consistently over a period of time, it sends a strong message to the team that you really mean it, that you believe it. And so that enhances the commitment.
So this has worked incredible for you in your military experience now. Why? When I think about people in their profession in life, they don't take things, a lot of people don't take things as serious as, say, the military would, because the military's life or death, or a professional sports team. Like if you're in a business, you're on a team, you're on whatever business you're in, that's your team. But we'll hold a professional sports team that's playing on a team to much higher standards, or the military, because it's life or death, than we will in our own lives. And when I look at that, I think that's a real shame, because what ends up happening is people hold themselves back so much in life. If they would realize these principles, especially the ones you just went through, if they were to live by these principles or just grow and develop by these principles, that they're going to have such a more fulfilling and successful life.
Yeah, absolutely. We all value the relationships that we have that tend to be high trust relationships, and they just are so meaningful to us. And when you as a leader are recognized and have a reputation as being someone who's very trustworthy, it's what it's really all about. And while we came upon these universal principles because we couldn't compromise, because of the potential consequences. But if people will just take these and, apply them and not compromise, that's what it comes down to, right? If you just don't compromise on them, you can have an amazing impact. People, your listeners may be asking, well, what's in it for me? Why should I do this work? And it is work, and that's why so few people do it really well. But I would say that, man, if you're part of a team and the team has, there's a huge opportunity or a crisis, and you're viewed as somebody who's really trustworthy, guess where they're coming? They're coming to you. They want you to be there to help solve the problem or seize the opportunity. And if you're viewed as a high trust leader and you're given the mission to take the hill, guess what? People are going to come out of the woodwork in order to join you on your quest, because it's so rare. So there's a huge power of attraction whenever you individually and your company is viewed as a high trust organization.
Yeah, and I love that you say you can't compromise that. And we were talking about this a little bit before we got online here, is, you need to have some non-negotiables in your life, in your organization. And why shouldn't one of those should be trust in your life? It should be non-negotiable. And I think that we compromise too many principles in life, some people. And if you can't have everything non-negotiable, because then you have no flexibility, but there should be some core principles and values such as trust and commitment and character and communication that you just don't negotiate. These are non-negotiables, and I'm not going to compromise my trust for anything in this world.
Exactly. I think, one of the keys for your listeners who are trying to build and develop high trust teams is, it's all about hiring the right people, making trustworthiness a core value that you evaluate in the hiring process, in the promotion process, and so forth. in order to achieve the potential that you have.
So we have 7 core values in my organization, and one of them is trustworthy. And one of the steps in our interview process is doing a core value presentation where they demonstrate their ability to demonstrate those core values in their life in the past, that they understand it, and how they're going to demonstrate those core values when they join our organization. And trustworthy is the first one.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, because it is all about the behavior, right? It's not, and unfortunately, too often people judge us based on our behaviors. Right. Do we walk, talk? Are we all in, and so forth and so on? Unfortunately, when our behavior and our values deviate, we let ourselves off the hook because we judge ourselves by a different yardstick. We judge ourselves based on our intentions. We say, "Oh, I meant to do that, but right. Whatever," right? And that's how we resolve the cognitive dissonance of being, not following our values.
Hey, such great stuff. I want to finish off on something really good that you said here. I've been taking notes when you're talking because you're spinning so much gold here. But I love what you said, and I want you to talk a little bit about this, that people are going to look at a leader and say, hey, are you better than yesterday, but not as good as tomorrow? And I think that just explain that a little bit, because I think I know what you mean, but I want you to explain to the listeners, because the better than yesterday might be obvious, but not as good as tomorrow might not be as obvious to the listeners. Let's talk a little bit about that. And it's the mindset, I think, is what you're thinking about as a leader.
Yeah. So my view is that leadership is all about change. The three elements that a successful leader has to have is a leader has to have a vision of where he or she want to take the organization. Mm-hmm. They have to have an unwillingness to accept the status quo. We're not going to stay here. We're going to get better and better, and we're going to go some places that we've never been before. And then they have the influence to bring the team along with them. And that influence comes from their investment in their teams, where they are viewed now as a trustworthy person. Because what comes with change all the time is a sense of fear and apprehension and anxiety. People wonder, what does this mean? Are we really going to do this? Can we do this? Or is this just another flavor of the month? Mm-hmm. Right? And so with that anxiety that always comes with change, they're gonna go, oh, I'm not sure, but I really trust this guy or this gal, my leader, and I'm going to come along and let's go. So leadership is really all about change. And by definition, I used to realize that, as all leaders should, is that I could have a good day and my team might have an average day. But my team would never have a great day if I, as the leader, didn't have a great day.
Right.
So my team wanted to keep getting better and better and better, and that wouldn't happen if fundamentally I, as the leader, had to keep getting better and better. And they did too, of course, but it all starts with the leader.
Amazing. I love it. Great stuff, George. Hey, so George, if any of our listeners want to reach out to you or contact you, I know that you do some speaking. Like, where can they find you?
Yeah, well, if they go to my website, georgedom.com, it kind of rhymes, or send me an email, george@georgedom.com. Happy to hear from folks. And I have a book on high trust leadership and teamwork that's coming out in September. So hopefully I'll make you aware of that when it's on the street. And if you'd let them know, that'd be great.
I'm looking forward to that. I'll definitely read that book. So September, that's coming out, right?
That's correct. Yep.
That's great. All right. Well, George, I'm sure that you and I will be reconnecting again here in the future and doing some work together. Really appreciated having you as a guest today. Really inspirational, a lot of knowledge, a lot of value for the listeners. And thank you so much. I know that our listeners are going to really enjoy this podcast.
Well, it's been I appreciate the invitation. I look forward to staying in touch.
Thanks, buddy. All right, there you go. That's another amazing episode of Steve Lags Unfiltered. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you like the video, put some comments, and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. And you can hear this on Spotify, Apple, iTunes, all the places that you can listen to the audio version of this. And if you need any leadership advice, you want any coaching, email me, steve@stevelags.com, and we'll hook you up. Looking forward to seeing you on the next episode of Steve Lags Unfiltered. Until then, go out there, be a great example for everybody in this world.
That's all for today's Steve Lags Unfiltered journey. Subscribe, rate, and leave a review to fuel your success journey. Also, be sure to listen to us on your favorite podcast channel or outlet. Stay tuned, stay unfiltered, and we'll catch you on the flip side. Boom.